How's it going out there? Aaron Sampson here.
And Ryan Schubert.
And we want to talk about World War III and whether it's going to upset Battlefield 5 this year. Battlefield just released their roadmap, and I'm just going to say that personally for me it reads like an early access title. A lot of the features that we were looking forward to aren't going to be there at launch, and oddly enough, World War III is also just coming out now as an early access title. It's channeling the spirit of Battlefield 4, if not maybe directly copying and improving on aspects of it. But a lot of people are interested in World War III, and we're trying to figure out if it has a shot. So let's get into it. Ryan, why don't you tell us how we got here?
Okay, so back in May, there was this sort of string of press events for upcoming video games. And the two big games that jumped on the sort of pre-E3 presentation bandwagon were Call of Duty and Battlefield. And both of them had presentations of their games that sort of freaked fans out. And they were back-to-back. One week was Call of Duty, the next week was Battlefield. And on the following Monday after Battlefield, the first announcement trailer for World War III dropped. And a whole lot of people got excited because it looked like Battlefield.
All right, so then Battlefield 5 got delayed, and World War III basically pushed up their early access to right around the week where Battlefield was supposed to come out.
Right.
To try and capitalize on it. More important than all this, though, is is World War III a good Battlefield game, for lack of a better term?
I mean, I would say, just as a quick short answer, that it is. It presses a lot of the Battlefield buttons that Battlefield hasn't been pressing very well.
I think if I had to narrow it down to one thing that I really like about World War III is that I've kind of had this feeling that Battlefield hasn't been quite right for a while. Recently I realized it came down to the gaming loop. The idea of a gaming loop is where a player is presented with a challenge. It's in every game. A player is presented with a challenge, they have a tool set to solve that challenge, then they beat it or they don't beat it and they learn something, and ideally they get rewarded for it. It's this continual loop that happens moment to moment in games and also happens between matches. So a great example of that is Titanfall, where you spawn in, you fight the other team, you do great, you get your Titan, you do more great work with your Titan, and hopefully you win the match. Battlefield 5 doesn't really have that loop. Because of the smaller map sizes and the random vehicle spawns, there's no reward for you doing anything, in my opinion, anymore. Yeah, there's the squad commander system, but that's one person in your squad who's getting rewarded. So basically you spawn, you run somewhere, you die, you spawn, you run somewhere, you die. You do that over and over again, and you never feel like you're getting your Titan to drop, right? So the tanks are just sitting in the back of the field, and you have to randomly die at a time when a tank is randomly spawning, and then randomly hope you have a good round in that tank and not get killed by an engineer. I think that World War III, in a nutshell, is doing a much better job at this loop. So they have battle points. You spend those battle points on the tank, or on the artillery strike, or on the other elements of the game, almost like a little bit of a Call of Duty element to it.
It's very similar to the Call of Duty score streak system. But it's not as aggressively dependent on whether you're kicking a whole bunch of ass.
The game also improves on Battlefield 4 in certain ways that are really interesting and moves the genre forward a bit. You can choose to get bonus points for attacking or defending objectives. So you can sit back and choose to defend and get rewarded for it. Or you can choose to go off and attack and get rewarded for it. Battlefield for a long time has kind of strayed away from the idea of conquest points being something that you want to stick around and defend. They're just not very interesting.
I wholeheartedly approve of this approach. One of my biggest gripes about Battlefield for a long time now is that conquest capture points aren't worth holding for any reason. If you can go back to some older versions of Battlefield where if you were holding that point, you would have artillery, you might have an airfield that was spawning planes, there might be a tank spawn there might be a real reason to hold that position. And in recent versions of Battlefield, it's basically a ditch or next to a bridge or something that really is just a place to sit for 30 seconds while you wait for a timer to go off. And World War III isn't that different on that respect, but its system of, capturing 2 points to get points instead of one single location, there's binary location capturing, and having that system where if you choose to be a defending player, you get more points by defending. I think that's really smart to sort of shaped the game into a more strategic battle.
Now, a lot of the points that you are talking about are, the best analogy I can use is the way that Blackout is sort of a best hits of Call of Duty environments. I will say this game's a bit derivative, and many of the places that you go, you'll recognize they feel like they're inspired by Operation Metro. There's a garage under one of the maps that looks like it was from the Close Quarters DLC. These devs are heavily inspired by great elements of great Battlefield maps. But these maps are huge, and there's so many routes through them, up and over them. They're large, and there's always ways you can attack objectives differently, which is something that I really like.
In a Battlefield game with a relatively high player count, there was always this sort of chance that your squad, you're just 4 or 5 guys, could go and take an objective on the other side of the map, or go and sort of harass an objective on the other side of the map while the main team was taking over like a position centrally located. This, with its roots and different ways to sort of sneak around, really does bring back the opportunity for that kind of gameplay.
I think also, with the size of the map and the type of gameplay you're talking about, oddly enough, World War III also gets the RPG tank balance that Battlefield's been kind of getting away from. Like, I remember in the Battlefield Alpha and Beta, if you lucked into a tank, you could oftentimes get destroyed by an engineer before you even knew that they were there. The RPG tank fights in this are better because they typically take place at longer ranges. They're more cat and mouse. It takes 3 or 4 hits, and sometimes you run out of ammo before you even kill it. Tanks can also go to the back of the map and heal up, so it feels like the older balance versus, I don't know, like everything is so sped up these days in Battlefield in a way that I just don't find to be compelling anymore.
One of the things I like about this game so far is the weapon customization and loadout options. It's similar to Insurgency in that it's based on weight, and at least at this point in the early access, everything is available to you. So you don't have to unlock things. You can just go in there and modify the weapons the way you want them, plug them into your loadout, and it'll just be dependent on how encumbered you want to be. And that really gives you a lot of freedom to decide how you want to play the game and what kind of sort of tactical player you want to be, rather than being dependent on unlocks the way Battlefield has become so tedious with unlocking. I really like these games that are sort of treating you more like an adult on that level. You're treated like you can figure out what you want, and you're going to have those toys available to you right away.
So I don't want to make this all sound too cheery, because World War III does have some aspects that it definitely lags behind Battlefield on. It cannot touch Frostbite when it comes to destruction. Sound design, I would say, is bad.
I agree with that. The sound design needs significant improvement. I know it's early access, but if they're going to pour resource into something, I would put it into sound, because we saw how effective sound is in Insurgency, a game that probably has the best sound that I've heard in a long time.
And it makes a huge difference in how you perceive that game.
It absolutely does. Like the graphics are probably a little bit better in World War III, but Insurgency, the sound really transports you to the environment. And the sound is definitely lacking in World War III.
There's also issues that they're going to have to work out with spawn killing or bad spawn placement. Battlefield's come a long way on their danger spawn system, and trying, maybe successfully sometimes, not others, to get you spawning in places where you don't instantly die.
Even if they're not doing it perfectly, you can tell that they care about it. The danger spawning thing was actually one of the best decisions they made in a long time in that game.
Then there's just your average bugs from an early access title, like tanks flying off into the sky when you get into them, falling through the map. The usual stuff you'll find from a game that's early on.
I agree that it's important to keep this in the context of early access. It's a little bit buggy. It takes a while to get into a match. I was finding that when I would create a custom loadout, it wouldn't save between sessions of the game. So there's definitely these things that show that it is not completely polished and has a ways to go.
It's currently $28 for an early access title, and they're going to start adding maps as they go. Battlefield's full price. We don't really know fully what's going to be there at launch. This roadmap, I think, was supposed to be a good thing, but I kind of read it as in most of the game I was expecting to be there won't be there at launch. And look, we could be wrong. We've played an alpha and a beta, and I've also played through 3 of the war stories, or at least portions of 3 war stories. So I honestly can't say that after all that, I feel like I have a good grasp of what exactly Battlefield is going to feel like at launch. But right now, the way it's been marketed, and from what I've seen, it feels more like an early access title. I know that might sound a little harsh, and we'll of course give it a fair shake, but at the end of the day, World War III has a shot of peeling off people who want a modern shooter, who miss Battlefield 3 and 4, who aren't super into the World War II setting for either mechanical or other reasons, and who want to stick with a game that's being developed. Ryan, do you think World War III has a shot against Battlefield this year?
I think it deserves a shot. Like, it, as you said, it is derivative. We are returning to basically trodden territory, but it does sort of feel like that game. If you miss the modern Battlefields, it's kind of got that tone to it. It, you know, as soon as you spawn in and it's raining and it's dark and it's gloomy, it's almost like being back in, you know, Grand Bazaar or Tehran Highway or something like that. Like it captures some of that feeling, and I haven't felt that in a little while in a Battlefield game.
All right, well, we'll just have to see. World War III is currently out in early access, and Battlefield 5 is out next month. So we'll follow up once we get our hands on Battlefield 5, and of course we'll have a full review for you on GameSpot.com. Thanks for watching. Let us know how you feel about the 2 games in the comments below. Are you playing World War III? Do you like it? Or is it kind of too rough around the edges for you and you're looking for that more polished Battlefield experience?
I'd really like to know what people think, because we had a lot of excitement around the trailers, but now that people have their hands on it, I really want to know.
It's make or break time. All right, thanks for watching.